Have you ever felt like something monumental is approaching America? Like our nation is being prepared for a transformation that'll change everything forever? What if I told you that the future is already being built right under our noses, but few can see it? Prepare yourself for a testimony that will shake your convictions about the destiny of the United States. My name is David Reynolds. I'm 42 years old and a political science professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I would be sharing a testimony like this, I would have been the first to question that person's credibility. I've always been skeptical, analytical, and academic to the core, but what happened to me on September 22, 2024, completely changed my perspective on reality, eternity, and God's divine plan for the United States and the world. That day I was in my office preparing a lecture on political transformations in the digital age when I felt excruciating chest pain. My assistant Sarah called 911, but before the paramedics arrived, I was already unconscious. What the doctors at George Washington University Hospital told me afterward was that my heart had stopped for 11 minutes and 15 seconds. By modern medical standards, I was clinically dead. But for me, those were the most intense and revealing minutes of my entire existence. Right after losing consciousness, I felt myself being lifted out of my body. It was a strange sensation, but not frightening. I saw my assistant Sarah crying in the hallway, the DC Fire and EMS department paramedics working frantically to revive me, but an inexplicable peace came over me. That's when a light began to form around me. It wasn't just physical light, it was as if each ray carried pure love, absolute knowledge, and eternal truth. Within this light, I heard my name being called with an authority and tenderness I had never experienced. "David," said the voice, and I instantly knew I was in the presence of Jesus Christ. There was no possible doubt. His presence was so powerful that every fiber of my spiritual being prostrated itself in worship. When I could see him clearly, I was struck by his eyes. They were like deep oceans of infinite wisdom, but at the same time radiated a love that made me feel completely accepted. Despite his knowing every flaw, every moment of academic pride that had distanced me from the simple faith of my childhood in Texas. "My son," said Jesus, "I brought you here to show you something that few can see. A great deception is being prepared, so subtle that it will deceive even those who consider themselves the most informed. You who have spent your life studying how nations are transformed need to see how the final transformation of the United States will happen," I protested. "Lord, I'm just a professor. Who would believe me?" He smiled with a mixture of firmness and compassion. "I have always chosen the unlikely to confound those who think themselves wise. Your role is not to convince, but to testify. I will take care of the rest." In an instant, we were in an American city that seemed familiar, but I knew it was the near future. The streets looked like Washington, D.C., New York, or any major American metropolis, but there was something subtly different in the atmosphere. "Observe carefully," said Jesus. "I'm going to show you how the enemy will use American innovation itself against Americans." I began to notice that people interacted with technology in a completely different way. There were no visible iPhones, credit cards, or wallets. Everything seemed to happen through almost imperceptible gestures or simple proximity to surfaces. I witnessed a mother buying medication for her child at a CVS pharmacy. She simply placed her hand over a high-tech reader at the counter, and instantly her identity was verified. Her Blue Cross Blue Shield medical history was accessed, the copay was processed, and the medication was released. Under the skin of her hand, I noticed a small blue glow. "Lord," I asked, intrigued, "is this the mark of the beast?" "No," Jesus replied calmly. "This is what will prepare the way. Watch how the trap will be set so slowly that no one will realize they're being captured." The scene transformed before us, and I began to see history unfolding like a documentary in fast forward. Everything started seemingly innocently. Small biometric devices were replacing social security cards, credit cards, and passwords. The justification was always the same: security, convenience, and efficiency. I saw the first implementations in hospitals like Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins. Doctors were implanting small chips in patients for continuous vital sign monitoring. It was revolutionary. It could detect heart attacks minutes before symptoms appeared, predict strokes, and alert about brain chemistry changes that indicated depression or anxiety. American families were delighted. Soccer moms were hugging doctors, thanking them for saving their children's lives through this miraculous technology. Senior citizens were living longer, teenagers were healthier, and diseases were being prevented before they even manifested. "See how apparent good can be used for dark purposes," said Jesus. "The enemy has learned that he can no longer use open persecution in the United States. It only strengthens my church. Now he uses deception, wrapped in real benefits." The technology evolved rapidly through Silicon Valley. From health monitoring, it moved to personal security. Parents were implanting GPS trackers in their kids so they would always know where they were. The propaganda on CNN, Fox News, and social media was intense. Never lose a child again. Never allow another kidnapping. I saw emotional commercials during the Super Bowl. Families were reunited after finding lost children thanks to implants. Impressive statistics showing reduction in crimes against children were displayed in FBI databases. What American parent would oppose something so clearly beneficial? Jesus pointed to an elementary school in suburbia where 6-year-old children were receiving their first implants. It was presented as a back-to-school event, almost a rite of passage. The children received colorful certificates, and parents took proud selfies for Instagram. Children are the main target, explained Jesus with sadness. They accept without questioning what adults might hesitate about. And so an entire generation grows up considering this normal, natural, even necessary. I continued observing the evolution through American innovation. The technology expanded to the financial system. Goodbye to credit cards, cash, or even smartphones. Everything was integrated into the human body. The promise was seductive. Zero possibility of identity theft, loss, or fraud. Instant transactions, unified global economy. End of financial exclusion. I saw people celebrating in Times Square when the last major bank announced complete digitization through biological implants. The future is here, they shouted. Finally, we've evolved beyond primitive money. But Jesus showed me something that physical eyes couldn't see. Each implant, each upgrade of the system came accompanied by something deeper. It was as if invisible wires were being connected not just to the body but to people's souls. Lord, I asked, disturbed, what exactly is happening? The enemy has discovered that he can influence the spirit through the flesh, Jesus replied. When he controls physical impulses, he gradually shapes spiritual desires. People begin to lose their ability to discern between good and evil, between truth and lies. The demonstration was devastating. I saw entire American families whose members had received the implants. Externally, they seemed normal, maybe even better than before. More organized, more efficient, less conflicted, but spiritually it was as if they were slowly fading away. I witnessed a Sunday service at a megachurch in Texas. The worshipers sang, prayed, and raised their hands. But there was something mechanized in their gestures. It was as if they were performing the roles of Christians, but the genuine life had drained away. Don't they realize what's happening? I asked, anguished. The process is so gradual that they feel better. Not worse, explained Jesus. Less anxiety. Fewer doubts. Fewer spiritual problems. They don't realize they're losing exactly what made them human. The ability to genuinely choose between good and evil. The vision continued, showing me how technology had integrated into all aspects of American life. Education, work, relationships, entertainment, everything went through the implants. It was presented as complete democratization, quality education for everyone through direct knowledge download, optimized work through automatically acquired skills, more harmonious relationships through personality adjustment. I saw Ivy League universities closing because they no longer made sense. Why study for years when you could download an MBA in minutes? I saw therapists unemployed because the implants already automatically regulated depression and anxiety. I saw Hollywood artists confused because their works were now generated by algorithms based on collective tastes captured by the devices. Jesus then took me to see the children who had grown up entirely within this American system. It was disturbing. They were educated, well-behaved, and healthy, but they lacked something essential: spontaneity, genuine creativity, the ability to dream beyond programmed parameters. This generation never knew real free will, said Jesus with profound sadness. They were born already connected, molded from the cradle. For them, questioning the system is literally unthinkable. The scene changed drastically. The United States plunged into chaos. I saw Wall Street collapsing, power grids failing coast to coast, and supply chains being interrupted. It was as if all American technological infrastructure had been simultaneously attacked. Now watch how the real trap will be activated, said Jesus with seriousness. Amid the nationwide panic, charismatic leaders emerged promising a definitive solution. They appeared on all screens across America simultaneously, speaking with an authority that seemed supernatural. The old system has failed, they announced from the Oval Office and other centers of power, but we've prepared something better. A completely new network, more secure, more stable. All current devices need to be updated to the final version of the global protection system. The propaganda was intense and sophisticated, running 24/7 on CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. They presented the update as natural evolution, like vaccination against future collapses. Religious leaders from all denominations appeared endorsing the change. It's not worship, they said on the 700 Club and other Christian programs. It's just improved technology. God wants us to use our intelligence to create a better world. But Jesus allowed me to see beyond appearances. What they called an update was qualitatively different from everything that had come before. When people voluntarily accepted this new version, something irreversible happened to their souls. I saw a typical American Christian family being updated. The father, a ministry leader from a Baptist church in Georgia, explained to his children, "I've researched a lot and prayed about this. I don't see anything in the Bible that prohibits medical technology. We need to be wise, not fanatics." The moment they accepted the update, a profound spiritual change occurred. It wasn't visible externally, but I could see how a shadow enveloped their spirits. They continued talking about God, quoting verses, and participating in church activities, but something fundamental had broken. "What happened to them?" I asked, horrified. "They lost the ability to genuinely connect with me," Jesus replied with grief. The update doesn't just control the body and mind, it corrupts God's image imprinted on the human soul. And this corruption is irreversible. It was then that I understood the magnitude of what I was seeing. This wasn't just about social control or economic dominance. It was a spiritual war disguised as technological progress. I saw millions of Americans queuing to receive the update. Entire families, communities, churches. The social pressure was immense. Those who refused were prevented from working, buying food, or having access to basic services. It was presented as a choice, but in practice it was total coercion. Even more devastating was seeing Christian leaders divided. Some warned about the spiritual dangers, but were ridiculed as conspiracy theorists in mainstream media. Others, with sincere good intentions, encouraged their congregations to accept, arguing that God wouldn't allow his children to be harmed by doing what seemed right. "Lord," I cried, anguished, "how can your people discern if even the leaders are confused?" "That's why I brought you here," Jesus replied. "To testify that truth doesn't depend on consensus. It depends on intimate relationship with me." They lived as social outcasts, excluded from the economic system, subtly persecuted. But spiritually, they shone with a light that the others had lost. I saw underground communities of faithful Christians, sharing resources, caring for one another, and keeping faith alive amid growing persecution. They weren't bitter or desperate. There was a supernatural peace in them, a joy that defied circumstances. "These are my true disciples," said Jesus with pride. They preferred to suffer temporal privation rather than lose eternal life. They chose to follow me even when it seemed like madness. I observed how these faithful Americans were sustained in miraculous ways. Food appeared unexpectedly, resources were provided through impossible channels, and divine protection was given against persecutions. It was like living in the days of the early Christians. "And the children, Lord?" I asked, worried. "How do we protect the little ones who can't choose for themselves?" Jesus showed me faithful Christian families facing the most difficult decision of their lives. Parents were crying, knowing that refusing the update for their children would mean condemning them to complete social exclusion. I saw children being removed from parents who refused to implant them, under allegations of medical negligence by Child Protective Services. But I also saw something glorious. Children were being raised outside the system, educated by Christian communities, growing up with a spiritual freedom that the implanted generation had lost. They were few, but they shone like stars amid the darkness. "These free children will be the seed of renewal," explained Jesus. "When I return, I will find in them the pure faith that the system couldn't corrupt." The vision then transported me to see the final consequences of the choice. Those who had accepted the update formed an apparently perfect American society. No crimes, no conflicts, no spiritual problems, but also no genuine love, no real creativity, no ability to truly worship. It was an empty existence disguised as fulfillment. They functioned as humans, but had lost their essential humanity. On the other hand, those who remained faithful, though few and persecuted, kept alive the flame of true humanity. In them, God's image remained intact, capable of love, choice, creation, and genuine worship. "Lord," I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility, "how can people prepare for this?" The answer came clear and direct. First, they must develop such an intimate relationship with me that they recognize my voice instantaneously. When something doesn't come from me, they'll know immediately. Second, they must study my word with total dedication. The answers are there, but they need to know the truth to identify the lie when it comes wrapped in apparent benefits. Third, they must form genuine communities of faith. In the difficult days, they'll need each other to remain faithful. Fourth, they must teach their children to value spiritual freedom above any temporal convenience. A generation that learns to choose God over comfort will be able to resist when pressure comes. And finally, they must not fear. I have already overcome the world. Those who remain in me will share in this victory regardless of the temporal price. Jesus then showed me his second coming. It was glorious beyond description. He returned no longer as a lamb, but as the Lion of Judah. Those who had remained faithful were instantly transformed and lifted to meet him in the air. The perfect but empty society that had been built through technology instantly crumbled before his presence. "This is the end of the story," said Jesus. "Good triumphs over evil, truth over lies, life over death. But each person must choose which side they'll be on when this moment comes." I then felt that I was being gently pulled back. "It's time to return," said Jesus. "Remember everything you saw and be faithful to the testimony." "But Lord," I protested, "who will believe something so extraordinary?" He smiled with infinite tenderness. "My word does not return empty. Those who have ears to hear will hear. Those who seek the truth will recognize it. Your role is to testify. Mine is to touch hearts." The next instant, I woke up in the ICU at George Washington University Hospital, surrounded by machines and astonished medical professionals. My recovery was considered miraculous by medical standards, but I knew the true miracle had been the revelation I received. This happened 10 months ago. Since then, I've observed technological development with completely different eyes. The speed with which artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and implantable devices are advancing is exactly as Jesus showed me it would begin. I'm not against all technology. I still use computers and iPhones to share this testimony. But I've developed sharp discernment about any technology that promises to improve the human being or requires direct integration with the body. I'm sharing this experience because I know time is running out. The technological base for everything I was shown already exists. The arguments for its implementation are already being built. The crisis that will drive it is being prepared. If you've read this far, I ask that you seriously consider this message. Not because it comes from me, I'm just a professor who had an extraordinary experience, but because it comes from the one who is truth itself. Strengthen your relationship with Jesus Christ now. Study the scriptures with new seriousness. Connect with other genuine Christians. Teach your children to love God above any comfort the world offers. And remember, when the choice comes, it will come. No convenience, no benefit, no temporal advantage is worth more than your eternal soul. The mark will come disguised as a solution. It will be presented as an intelligent and compassionate answer to humanity's problems. It will promise health, security, prosperity, and peace. But the price will be your ability to genuinely connect with God. Jesus showed me that many will doubt this testimony. Some will laugh, others will ignore it. This doesn't surprise or discourage me. My mission is not to convince everyone, but to faithfully testify to what I saw. Those who are seeking truth will recognize God's Spirit confirming these words in their hearts. Those who already feel something is wrong with the direction America's taking will find here the explanation they were looking for. If this testimony awakened fear in you, remember Jesus' words. "In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world." The darkness will be intense, but our light will shine even brighter. The pressure will be great, but our faith will be greater. The deception will be sophisticated, but our discernment will be superior. Stay close to Jesus, know his voice, feed your faith daily, and when the moment of choice comes, you'll know exactly what to do. This is my story, the testimony I was called to share. May God open your spiritual eyes to see what is coming and strengthen your heart to remain faithful to the end. What a powerful revelation we just heard. The Bible warns us in Revelation 13:16-17 about a time when everyone will be forced to receive a mark, without which they cannot buy or sell. Professor David's testimony shows us how this might happen in a much more subtle way than we imagined. We thank Professor David for his courage in sharing this extraordinary experience. And to you who stayed until the end, may these words serve as an alert and encouragement to strengthen your faith and spiritual discernment. Truth may be disturbing, but it's always preferable to illusion. Stay firm in the Word, vigilant in spirit, and confident in the Lord. Until the next video, may the blessings of the Almighty be upon your life and family.